It's me, Chris Sweeney, coming to you from somewhere slightly different today. I'm in my husband's office, and he doesn't like me being in here because he says I mess it up. He's not wrong, to be fair, but he's about to get home. He's going to be home in a minute. So we're on a secret mission here, listeners. This is Homo Sapiens Incognito. Sip of water. How are we all doing? All's well over here. I'm stationary because it's so cold and dark. I was like, I missed the boat with going out and doing it in the daylight. So I'm recording to you with you from William's office, and for those on video, you can see it. For those on audio, I'll describe it. It's small and brown, and we are catching up with your emails. We're catching up with your messages. Looking at your feedback on last week's episode. We were talking about code switching, which, if you remember, is kind of when you talk about it in queer terms, is sort of how you change your behavior around different people. Everything seems to do, it always comes down to a taxi, doesn't it? It depends, it's how you behave in a taxi. 92% of you said you do code switch. Interesting. And uh, it's something that we all do every day. I literally do it all the time. Actually, it's quite funny. I was having an interesting conversation yesterday about schools in Yorkshire with the guy from Yorkshire, and he was saying how the farming community, he was straight, but he was saying how it's very ultra masculine. And then this queer person was saying, about how you have to code switch in the countryside. And it's interesting. I don't feel living in the countryside. I don't know that I feel I have to code switch for safety, but I at all feel very safe. But I think that there's just a little bit of people don't expect to encounter a queer person. Even I think it's to do with that, if that makes any sense. So I think you kind of do a bit of code switching for that to grease the wheels, I suppose. I think in London, even if imagine you were homophobic in London, I think you'd, regardless of that, you'd still understand that you were going to see it. I know, there's a massive queer community here, and there's many gay people as there are anywhere else in the world. But it's interesting that's the kind of upshot you get from it. And what we can do, listeners, is have a look at the inbox. Really interesting email we had. Actually, again, something to do with being queer outside of London. So, hi, Chris. I wanted to write in because something happened recently that took me right back to a place I genuinely thought I'd left behind. I was at my cousin's wedding in London, but most of the guests weren't from London, and it brought up a feeling I haven't had in years. Growing up, I remember being at family events or parties where straight people felt the need to point out my sexuality, like they were doing me a favor by saying, "Oh, you're gay," or "You're obviously gay." And at this wedding, suddenly I was back in that exact dynamic. A bunch of straight guys made these comments completely unprompted, and when I pushed back a bit, or even just asked why it needed to be said, I somehow became the difficult one, in inverted commas. That feeling of isolation hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I honestly thought I'd outgrown all of that. At one point, a guy came up to me and said, "You're gay, so come and rate me out of 10." I asked him, "Where do you come from?" And he said, "Basingstoke." I replied, "That makes sense. The question feels very regional." And again, I was suddenly the offensive one. There's this bizarre entitlement. Because I'm gay, I'm expected to entertain these comments, answer personal questions, and take it all with a smile. It reminds me so much of being younger when straight men would ask wildly inappropriate questions like when I lost my virginity, as if my personal life was public property. And if I didn't respond with saint like patience, I was the issue. It's honestly a shame that at 38 this still happens with grown adults. I left the wedding feeling awkward, frustrated, and surprised that this dynamic is still so alive outside of my usual circles. So I would love to ask, have you ever been in this position? Do other listeners still experience this? And do you have any advice on how to carry myself in these situations without either shrinking myself or being painted as the difficult one? Thanks so much for giving space to conversations like this. Well, thank you for this message. And it's really interesting that uh, as in the things that that you bring up are really interesting. It's not interesting this happened. It should not have happened. I just want to say that to you first. I Have you ever been in this position? Let's go through your questions. I have been in this position in several different ways in my time. But I will say I haven't been in this position for quite some time. I've been in a sort of subtler one where you get asked lots of questions about yourself as if you're like a science project, like when you were talking about people asking when you lose your virginity. And in a way, it's so unconfrontational that it's kind of harder to pull someone up on it. And I tend to just shut the conversation down. And I think that there's nothing wrong with shutting a conversation down, even if it makes it all a bit awkward for a minute, because I think the penny always drops. So that's kind of how I handle that stuff. Um, Listeners, the other question is: Do other listeners experience this? If you have, um, please write in hello at homosapienspodcast.com, at Homo sapiens on Instagram. Um, Tell us if you've ever experienced something like this listener has. I um I think that weddings are funny, aren't they? Because they are a group. They bring together disparate groups of people. They are often fueled by a lot of alcohol, and you were fascinating these people. They were curious about you, and they didn't know how to handle that curiosity, so they chose to try and make you feel small. Would be my assessment. Um, you mentioned here, do you have any advice on how to carry myself in these situations without either shrinking myself or being painted as the difficult one? So here's the thing. Two things. Alan Cumming always says this thing, which I think I use so much, which is he was talking about when someone's being aggressive, you say to them, what do you need? And that can really neuter the situation. But I also think it works for something like this, not necessarily to ask people that question, but it's like, what do they need, or what do they think they need, or what do they want? And I think that person is, when I read that, that person's trying to get a rise out of you. And I have a big feeling with stuff like this that one should never let somebody else set the agenda, set the tone of an exchange. And um, you have way more power than you think you have in those scenarios. And so I would say that, and slightly on top of that, is about don't react. Like, well, it's the same point really. I don't think you want to react in situations like that. You are offended, and it's hard. You're offended, you're angry, but you're about to, if you respond by being rude back, there is one part of you that has allowed yourself to have the agenda set for you. And actually, we don't need to entertain conversations like that. And I feel really strongly that you can say that you just don't want to talk about that in a sort of really calm, firm way of, you don't want to talk about that. Or you can also say, and I really believe this, I'm sure you do not mean to be offensive, but actually that is quite offensive. And because I don't think you can ever underestimate how people don't think they're being offensive. Although I just said he was trying to get a rise out of you. So I think he could be candidly trying to connect as well. But regardless of all of that, I think you keep your grace and say, I don't think you realize this, but that's actually quite offensive. And give someone an opportunity to understand. And oddly, I think people, in my experience, do kind of get snapped back into reality. It's not the same thing, but I will like, there was this guy being so loud on the train, and like, it was like comedy loud. He was shouting at the top of his voice, and everyone was getting really huffy in the carriage and rolling their eyes and looking at each other and stuff. And I was like, I'm just going to go and speak to him. So I tapped him on the shoulder, and instead of telling him off, which is just going to get an explosion, I just said, "Hello, I'm sorry. I'm not sure you realise, but you're talking quite loudly." He was so surprised. He was like, "Oh my God, sorry." And then stopped. Brackets, he then went back up to the same volume moments later. But like, some people people don't realize, and I think LGBT people are we're sensitive sausages. I'm hypersensitive. I can walk into a room and be strung out by someone 400 feet away who hasn't even spoken to me. Energy, I feel like I absorb energy, or sometimes I even invent an energy I can feel. So that said, I think that, you know, you are very sensitive to something extremely rude, as you should be, but don't let that connect with your nervous system. Just try and keep control and take control and say, I don't want to talk about that, or I'm sure you don't realize that that's actually very offensive, and take a minute to educate someone. And then if they do not pick up what you're putting down, as some a great saying someone used to say, I'm a bit like, then you have every right to be rude, because I give people a chance, but after that, it's, that said, and then you asked about how not to be labeled the difficult one. I don't think we can ever bother. I don't think we can ever worry about that. If someone wants to make you the difficult one, they're going to make you the difficult one. You just have to hold your shape, as my therapist would say, which is you're you. Don't let someone else make you an angry person in that moment. Don't let them make you a petty person in that moment. You stay you, no matter what sort of rocks get thrown at you. I think that's a really valuable thing that I have found incredibly useful. That really works, and also what I'll say really works is silence. You have every right to remain silent in a situation where someone says something rude. Just let, because we all jump in to respond, and just let what they said fill the room a bit. Just leave a gap. Just be like, I'm just going to let you have a think about that for a minute. Oh, what's his name? That guy on Instagram who does conflict resolution. I started following him when he didn't have many followers. Now he has like millions. He wrote a book. Anyway, he says this thing where he should say to someone, wait, he says you should say to somebody, would you mind repeating that? So if someone says something rude, like someone says something rude, like, and sort of quick, where they're like, well, you never would you? Like that kind of thing under their breath. And you just ask someone to repeat it, because it really it puts them on the spot. You remain in control. He's big on that as well. I'll find him and share him, put him in the show notes. But what is he called? I loved his videos. Anyway, he is very much about that, remaining in control, not letting other people set the agenda. I think I've just seen my husband pull up in the car outside. Um, and yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Listeners, can you write in hello at homosapienspodcast.com, at homosapiens on Instagram? Let's all group together and let's hive mind. I think they say let's hive mind this. How would you have reacted in that situation? I want to know. I think it's a very, 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 very interesting situation, and it shouldn't have happened, is what I want to say. But I will say, but it did. And for that reason, it's not your fault, and I'm sorry it happened. And let's think about how we can all, your subject heading of your email was straight men. How can we tackle straight men better in the future? We have got a very exciting episode coming up next week. It's Sean Fay talking all about love. We're talking about queer love. You all wrote in with your ideas of like stories about love and what it means to you all. And Sean talking about the intersection of queer love and being a trans woman. it's one of those interviews where we just sat and talked, and so that comes out this Tuesday. Um, sorry, this Thursday. It's Tuesday today. Um, when you do an interview, you then go through and highlight the bits of it that you want to be the quotes. I was just highlighting every sentence. Sean takes on like a really big idea every 2 seconds, and she really eloquently defines it and describes it. And basically, talking about her book, Love in Exile, is about what is love for queer people on the margins. She's also talking about it as a trans woman, but it's more broad than that. When you're sold certain ideas of what love should be, you perhaps have not felt you're worthy of love, and therefore you identify the wrong things as love. So drama and attention you can think is love. She talks about this concept of limerence, which is really interesting about how you can become besotted with someone and how that starts. And queer people often feeling that love is conditional or feeling like they're not enough can start. And I got told about limerence in therapy. So it's really funny that she started talking about it as well, because I was describing a situation I'd been in. The therapist was like, this is limerence. So we talk all about that as well. Also, loads of funny stuff. Sean is hilarious, and talking about dating straight men and what it's like, and very interesting. She says this beautiful thing about a date for straight men. Dating a trans woman infers no social capital, so therefore they always feel slightly ashamed of you, and therefore you become the therapist therapizing them through why they love you. And it's so interesting and just so good to hear, because she comes from a place of like, we deserve love, and I just loved chatting to her. So that's coming next week. I'm gonna have to go because husband's walking towards the house. I've got a blooming light up in here. I need to zup the place together. But we will get to more of the inbox next time. Thank you for everyone who's been writing in. Hello at homosapienspodcast.com, at homosapiens on Instagram. We must enter, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you would like to win Jessie Ware's sourdough. Go to Apple Podcast, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Homo Sapiens Pod. That's it for now, listeners. I'm going to do a very 33-second fast tidy of this room. It's been lovely to chat to you. Do write in, sending you loads of love.